Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dev Diary, and today folks, we're taking inspiration from something illegal. Spicy. So before things get too hot, if you enjoyed today's video, remember to leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. So a while back, I watched a streamer play an old Nintendo DS game on an emulator. It was a game that utilized both screens, and so things that happened on the top screen would affect the bottom. The problem was that these screens were flush, but with the DS consoles, there was a gap between the two screens. And the game compensated for this gap, so there's a good, roughly half second where the player has no idea what's happening. So in other words, it's kind of like a chunk of the experience is technically missing from the game when it's emulated. And so of course inspiration struck, what if that was an actual game? Indeed, this is yet another split screen project, but this time the left screen is the top half of our game level and the right is the bottom half. And it's a very simple catch the falling things game. The player simply has to collect as many falling apples as possible in 90 seconds or die trying. Because collecting apples is very serious business. Said player can move around the stage freely but is technically confined to a little grid area, which can kind of be made out on the floor tiles themselves. And that's really all the player can do. Move around and attempt to catch apples as they rain down from the sky. And we achieve this effect of said falling by giving each apple object a Z variable. This variable allows us to keep track of how quote-unquote high the apple is from the floor, and also helps us create the visual effect of a falling apple. When that Z variable hits 0, this assumes that the apple has hit the floor and it explodes into particles before destroying itself. However, if the player is colliding with an apple and the apple has fallen a reasonable distance, the player will collect the apple instead. A quick reminder that if you enjoy what I do here, supporting me on Patreon is a great way to help me keep doing it. You can get access to exclusive content and downloads, and even early access to the weekly Dev Diary videos before they're released on YouTube. Now, there are two types of apples. Red apples will be added to the player's apple count, which can be found at the bottom right of the right side of the screen. Collecting a purple apple, however, will hurt the player, and their current health can be found at the bottom left of the right side of the screen. And while we're talking about informational elements here, time remaining is displayed both on the left side and a giant text amongst the clouds, and on the right in between the player's health and the apple count. Admittedly, this is somewhat redundant, but at least this way the player always knows how much time is left no matter which side of the screen they're paying attention to. And once time is up or the player's health is completely depleted, the round is over. The final score is displayed and the player can then try again by pressing spacebar. Again, very simple concept, but it was for good reason. As expected, this was extremely chaotic, even with the decision to make the screens quote-unquote overlap a bit vertically, which is meant to help give the player a reference point for distance. But it was still hard to tell which apples were falling where, and maybe this could have been solved by slowing the apple's fall speed or adding better visual cues. But either way, this was just as chaotic as expected, and actually funny story, the original idea was an action shooter. So yeah, going with something simple was probably the better choice here. Also, after working on the first split screen idea, I wanted to see just how easy it'd be to make a more straightforward split screen game in modern gamemaker, because the last time I attempted to do one was in Studio 1.4, and it was in fact pretty straightforward. But something happened when working on this project, and evidently I don't know how modern gamemaker's camera system works at all. It used to be as easy as just defining two viewports and smashing them together, which seems to be how it's done nowadays, but no. For some reason, I just could not get the two views to work properly, while also being in the correct aspect ratio. It was honestly a nightmare. A ridiculous amount of time was wasted trying things over and over again, but the result was the same every time, no matter the method. So technically, this project was pulled off by cloning our main surface and drawing it twice, with each half prioritizing different sections of the room. Like I should have been able to do with the views. Anyway, it's clear that I've got some learning to do in my free time, mostly out of just sheer absurdity that this didn't work. But regardless, this was a fun experiment that was expected to end in chaos, and boy was it, in fact, pretty chaotic. So for this week, let me know of any experiences that you've had where something should have worked, but for whatever reason wouldn't. It doesn't even have to be game dev related. I'd love to hear from y'all, so be sure to leave your thoughts and stories in the comments. Just help me know that I'm not alone. And with that said, brings us to the end of today's Dev Diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.